Welcome back, everybody. We are back in another chapter of Second Chronicles, chapter 30 to be exact. And chapter 30 is a good one. It's a good one. So I hope you're ready. Today we're stepping into Second Chronicles chapter 30. It's a chapter that proves something powerful. When God opens a door, he invites way more people in it than we usually expect. And this is a story about unity, about mercy, about second chances, and the biggest worship comeback Israel had ever seen, well, at least in generations. So without further ado, let's dive in. I wanted to start off by reading verse 9 in chapter 30 to you. It says, "For if you return to the Lord, your relatives and your children will be treated mercifully by their captors, and they will be able to return to this land. For the Lord your God is gracious and merciful. If you return to him, he will not continue to turn his face from you." So if you remember the previous chapter, chapter 29, it was all about reopening what had been closed. Chapter 30 is about inviting everyone to the party. And I do mean everyone. So King Hezekiah is still the king. He decides it's time to celebrate the Passover again, and it's a celebration where the people hadn't properly observed in a long, long time. So this isn't just a small church potluck. This is a major spiritual moment of the year. But there's just one problem. They're not ready in time. The priests aren't prepared, the people aren't purified, and honestly, it's all a little chaotic. So King Hezekiah, he does something bold. He pushes the celebration back 1 month, and he sends invitations out nationwide, not just to Judah, but to Israel as well. Yeah, even the tribes who had drifted the furthest away from God. This is like inviting your entire contact list to a family reunion and hoping that nobody asks, "Wait a minute, who's paying for all of this?" Now, some people laughed at the invitation, some mocked it, some said, "Yeah, right, I'm not going to that." But others, they humble themselves. They come, they show up. When they gather, it's messy and imperfect. Some folks show up not properly purified. Some don't follow every single ceremonial rule that they had in place. But King Hezekiah, he prays. God shows mercy, and instead of saying, "Come back when you get your life together," God heals the people, and he meets them where they're at. Then the worship begins, and it's so good that the people decide to extend the celebration for an additional 7 days. It's like going to a worship night at your church that's supposed to end at 8:30, and it's like 10:45 and nobody's moving because God is clearly doing something. And by the end, the joy is so great that the Bible says nothing like it had been seen since the days of Solomon. That's hundreds of years. All because King Hezekiah said, "Let's invite everybody, even the unlikely ones." So what can we learn from chapter 30 today? Well, first, I believe that God's invitations go wider than our invitations. King Hezekiah didn't just invite the faithful. He invited the people who hadn't been to the temple in ages, the ones who weren't purified, the ones who had drifted, the ones who didn't fit. God still does that today. He invites people that we stopped praying for, that we maybe have given up on or written off. He's not just building a church. He's building a family. The second thing that's important is we should not wait for perfect conditions to seek God. The priests in this chapter were not fully ready. The people were not fully ready. But they showed up anyways. They came anyways. And sometimes when we wait for that moment where everything lines up perfectly, really it's just procrastination. And I think it's important to note that God moves in sincerity, not perfection. It's also kind of cool that your obedience might reach people that you never expected. When King Hezekiah walked in obedience, the invitation reached cities and tribes that hadn't listened to God in years. And when you step forward in obedience, it might be the nudge that somebody else needs. I love that this chapter shows us that God honors imperfect people. Some people in this chapter didn't follow all the purification rules. They didn't do it out of rebellion, but because they simply didn't know. But God didn't reject them. He healed them. Sometimes we might think, "I don't know enough," or "I'm not good enough yet." But God responds to hearts that are turned towards him, even if they're still learning the basics. And last but not least, sometimes the best moments with God can happen when we stay longer than we expected or longer than we planned. The people here, they extended their celebration for 7 extra days because God was clearly moving. And when God shows up, the lesson here is that you don't rush. You linger, you soak it in, you stay. And all of this connects right back to verse 9 where we began. It says, "For if you return to the Lord, your relatives and your children will be treated mercifully by their captors, and they will be able to return to this land. For the Lord your God is gracious and merciful. If you return to him, he will not continue to turn his face from you." The Lord your God is gracious and merciful. He will not turn his face away from you if you return to him. I love that. Chapter 30 is this verse lived out in real time. People return, some awkwardly, some apologetically. But God welcomed them all the same with open arms because that's who God is. That's who he's always been, and that's who he will always be. So here's the challenge for you today. Ask yourself, who is God inviting me to include? Is it someone that I stopped believing could change? Is it somebody that I've avoided? Is it someone who's on the outside looking in? Are there any areas where I've waited in my life to be perfect before I come back to God? I challenge you to come as you are. Invite someone else to come with you. You can simply pray, God, thank you so much for inviting me even when I'm imperfect, even when I don't have my life all together. Help me extend that same invitation to others that are around me. And that is chapter 30. I hope that this was helpful for you in some way. Just remember that when God opens the door, when you show up, even when you're imperfect, when you include the ones that everybody else overlooks, just know that won't He do it?